Hey, Missouri 4-H volunteers. Welcome to another episode of Volunteer Vibe. I hope everyone had a happy new year. And we are now on the 8th episode of our podcast. This month, I'm really excited to have on the show Katie Hogan, who is our Northeast Region Youth Development Specialist. Katie has a tremendous amount of experience working with volunteers, training volunteers. And one of the things that she's really good at is understanding the importance of reflection in learning. So as many of you probably know, in 4-H, we work from the experiential learning model, which essentially says how we learn in 4-H through experience is broken down into three main kind of activities, which is to do, which is to reflect on the doing, and then applying those lessons, those learnings, reflections in other aspects of our lives, as well as in the activities that we do in 4-H. And through that, we get better at things. We improve. We gain and acquire skills and mastery in those different areas and other areas of our lives. So as we are about to embark on the new 4-H year and everyone's gearing up for their new clubs and projects, we thought it'd be great to kind of spend a little time discussing the importance of reflection and learning. Katie's going to walk us through some tips that all of us volunteers can use in our projects and clubs as we work with young people, and share with us on why reflection is so important to help young people learn and develop. So once again, Caydance is with me as my co-host. I'm so excited to have Caydance, and we're just really excited to have Katie on. So sit back, relax, and enjoy another episode of Volunteer Vibe. Have you on Volunteer Vibe. We've been meaning to have you on for a while, and we're so excited to have you tell us or share with our volunteers a little bit about reflection. Tonight's podcast episode is all about reflection in 4-H. So let me just start off by saying, so we all know about the experiential learning model that we use in 4-H, which is do, reflect, apply, right? And I'm sure Caydance has heard that over the years many times about how we do things in 4-H, how our 4-Hers learn. But it's really interesting that when it comes to actually doing the work, right? Most people, we talk about the hands-on skills that young people acquire. The doing gets a lot of the attention. And of course, the applying afterwards, they apply it back into the projects and the skills that they've learned and try to improve those skills, or they apply those skills into other areas of their lives. But it's the reflection piece that doesn't get the attention, right? And as we know, as learning sort of scientists, we know that that's the most important part of the process, right? So how can we help our volunteers spend a little bit more time focusing on the importance of reflection in their 4-H work? All right. So Candace, I will turn it over to you. Kaden, sorry. Why did you call
it? You're okay.
Turn it over to you to get us started with the questions for Katie. So
okay. Awesome. To start us off, I was going to ask Katie, what does meaningful reflection look like to you in a 4-H setting, and how is it different from just asking, what can I do today, or what did you do today? Kind of look into what meaningful reflection looks like.
So one of the things that I've actually been sharing with a lot of the volunteers I've been working with in different trainings is this idea of reflection is something that we as a society need to invest a little bit more in. We're all in that habit where we get up in the morning and you have your list of things that you've got to do, and you go to work and you pick up the kids and you go home and you make supper, and then you fall into bed, and you might spend a minute or two thinking about all the things that you did that day or all the things that you have to do the next day. Yeah. But we really don't take that time to stop and think about not only what did I do, but that meaningful reflection of what did I learn from that? And then how can I use it? And it's really that thinking about your own learning and your own development that is very important. And taking that intentional time, and it doesn't take a lot of time, but it does take intention to really think about that. It may be as simple as, okay, today I got up and I made my list of to-do things, and I focused on the top 3 on that list. And at the end of the day, I can look at that list and say, okay, I either got these things done, or I can look at that list and say, okay, maybe I didn't get these 2 or 3 things done because maybe I spent more of my time focused on answering the 57 emails that came in all day long. And so then I can come back and tomorrow and go, okay, you know what? I need to check my email first thing. Then I need to put that away and come back to it later, so that I can be more effective. The same way with our 4-H members. I'm also a 4-H volunteer and parent. And you can use a lot of what I like to call sneaky learning to help with those reflection moments, but really being intentional to talk about with our youth. What did you do? But not just what you did. What did you learn from that? And then how can you use that information, or why was it important to you and to other people?
Yeah, that's really good. It really puts action to the words. It's a start to putting the action to those words and putting action to the reflection. Yeah, I love that. You have anything, Steven?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Turn it back to you.
Kind of going off of that question, how can volunteers put action to that reflection and build that into meetings or project work without adding extra time or stress?
A lot of it is how you formulate your project meetings and your efforts. As a parent, I'll tell you, this last 2 years, I've tried to do more reflection with my own daughter, and I got
Mhm.
sneaky. Every time we have a 4-H meeting or a project meeting, on the way home, I pick up the phone, hands free, of course, and I dial my mom, because what does your grandmothers naturally do? Well, where are you coming from? What did you do? What did you learn? And then she asks those intuitive questions like, oh, so that young man made a rope halter. Well, is that something that you could do? How might you use that? Is that a skill that you could develop? So there are easy ways that you can do that as a parent. As a volunteer, we have a lot of useful resources that we can use in our project meetings, in our club meetings, that can facilitate that reflection in very easy ways. One of my favorite ones is actually using a project record. Sit down and write those objectives, but then at the end of your meeting, there's a place on here that says, what date did you accomplish it? And so reflect on what you learned in that project meeting so that you can document if you accomplished parts or pieces of your goals. Another great thing to do, and especially awesome at the end of a meeting, is work with your group and fill out a group project report. This is a wonderful way for them to document and easily think about, okay, what did we do? What's coming up next? And then they can take that back and present that group project report at their next club meeting. That gives them an opportunity for public speaking, but that also may inspire another member in the club that really had never thought about what that project might do. And so they might be interested in that too. So those are really great opportunities. There's tons of other easy games and activities that you can incorporate into your project meetings that take a tiny bit of time and a tiny bit of intention, but can also bring that fun along with acknowledgement of that learning.
So, Katie, those are some really great tips, I think. One of the things that I observe in some of the club and project meetings is, like I said before, there's a real focus on learning the skills, right? And even a lot of the young people that join projects, they just want to learn the skills. So how do we orient our volunteers to, at the outset, to understand that there's got to be some kind of reflection piece in what you do, whether it's a club or a project?
One of the biggest things, and it's that society issue of not slowing down long enough to think about why we did something. So what?
Yeah.
Why does that matter? One of my biggest pet peeves is we are phenomenal in Missouri 4-H about every club doing so much community service. But how often do we stop at the end of that activity and go back as a club and say, okay, what did you learn from this experience? Why does that
Mhm.
matter? And so it really is making a part of the culture that we take that time to be intentional, to ask ourselves, and then what do we learn going forward? It could be at the end of that project meeting, the young person goes, I absolutely just love doing this. And maybe I want to invest more time and energy into learning more about this. Or Like myself as a 4-H'er, I did sewing for 1 year. My mom was my project leader. And in that year, we learned some valuable things. I learned that my mom is a phenomenal seamstress, but I learned that I have no passion for sewing and no desire to learn. And because I was able to acknowledge that that just wasn't something I wanted to do, I was able to refocus my efforts into another area. So taking the time even to figure out something that you don't like or don't care about gives you the information that you can then go forth and apply, whether that is investing more time, seeking out more resources, or changing directions and finding something else that does help or meet your interests.
Which is part of the process of helping young people discover their sparks, right? Which is
Yeah.
we always
Yes,
I
yeah.
love it. I love it. I also think that that reflection gives a sense of healthy pride to the people who are doing those projects too. I mean, you talked about those project forms. I mean, I've personally done that and filling them out and then going back to look at the ones I've done 5 years ago and realize, that was a lot of work, but look how much I grew. I grew a lot just in
Mm.
the past several years, that reflection really gives a lot of pride in yourself.
It's
it's
like
acknowledging
journaling.
growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had a young man several years ago, and he had been really big into a couple of different projects. And he came back and decided that he wasn't going to re enroll in 4-H. And I'm looking at this going, okay. So I literally I sent an email to him and his family. And I said, okay, I said, I'm going to ask, and this is just a pure question. Why are you making this choice?
Mm.
And I said, because if it is, I would just want to know why. And he came back and he said, here's the thing. I've got an opportunity to do this job, and this is something that is going to lead to my career. And
Mm.
so if I'm going to do that and do it well, I've got to make some choices based on a limited amount of time. I have never been so glad to hear somebody tell me that they weren't going to belong in 4-H,
Yeah.
because even though he was walking away from the program,
Yeah.
he had the confidence and had put in the time and forethought to think through and make decisions based upon that experience. And that is a part of that reflection.
Right.
Right.
Sound decision making. Yep, for sure.
Yeah. And he learned that in 4-H. I mean, 4-H is
Exactly.
about that. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Reflection and
Uh,
practice. Okay.
yeah.
Cadence. Good.
So, kind of going off of that question again, what are some more simple reflection strategies that work well across different project areas and then also different age ranges? You have young kids and then older kids. How do you do that?
Good question.
That is one of the biggest struggles to being a 4-H volunteer. Is it's almost the mentality of that one-room schoolhouse teacher. But
Mhm.
I like to keep things simple. I also like to have fun. And that's where, if you bring that fun, it honestly does not matter if you're working with a
Right.
group of Clover kids or a group of adults, because
Yeah.
they like to have fun, even if they won't own up to it sometimes, just as much. So it could be as simple as having a ball that you toss and everybody shares something that they learned. Or a couple of my favorites, I've got a dice, and it can be a small die, or you can get a great big foam dice for like $5 at some cheap stores. But each one of those numbers on the dice has a reflection question that is tied to. So everybody gets the chance to roll that die and say maybe they roll 3. They're going to share something about that project experience that day that they want to remember. Or maybe they roll a 4 and that question is, what was your aha moment today? And so it really makes them start to think through that. Another great one, you can use a deck of cards. Hand out a random deck of cards. And so maybe each suit has a different question that they're going to answer. So a heart might be, how did you feel about today's activity or the fundraiser that we did? And then maybe it is a diamond. What was something you found precious? What was that golden nugget you got out of this experience? So it gives everybody a little bit of a chance to be physical, but also to provide that insight and slow down and think about what it is you're doing. I've used both of those with over kids all the way up to adults, and they kind of like it. It's a little bit different, but very simple things that you can do with very inexpensive things most people have around the house.
I love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Fun really connects everybody. if you make it fun, it really makes everybody loves it if you
Yeah.
do that.
So I'm coming back too. So
Yep. This is kind of what we talked about with that young man that was quitting the 4-H program for something bigger, but how does reflection help youth connect project skills to real life skills like communication, problem solving, and confidence?
So, two things that I would like to share. One around that is the best advice I have ever gotten from a parent and longtime 4 H volunteer. And I was very early in my career with Extension, and she says, you know what? Tell them to get a notebook. So, okay, that's easy enough. She had worked with her kids, her grandkids, and now she's working with her great grandkids. But
Wow.
they have a notebook, and every 4 H club meeting and event, she makes them sit down and write down what did you do and what did you learn? What did you do
Nice.
and what did you learn? And then at the
have it.
end of the year, we have those opportunities to complete the Missouri recognition forms. Don't let them stress you out as much as they can. Also, as a parent, don't try to do it all in one night. That is a recipe for disaster.
Yes.
But sit down and look at what you have done over the year. And that is a great time to think about how to apply it. A lot of people, when they're completing those forms, have a really hard time seeing what did I do? And now how does that equate to a life skill? One of my
Yeah.
very favorite things, I actually have two of them here in my office, including one in the back that is like huge, is the life skills wheel, the 4 H life skills wheel out of Iowa. And it really takes and has all of those life skills that are tied to the different areas of head, heart, hands, and health. And having those in front of you as options makes it a lot easier to identify those skills. Well, oh, I learned problem solving, or I learned time management. I learned, I developed some self esteem because I figured out I can do this. But having those options, and sometimes when you're working with younger kids, it's really hard for them to come up with that. And so offering them, okay, did anybody learn, maybe as an adult, I can look at and say, okay, we learned how to share with others. Offer those as options and then ask them for examples to apply it because that makes it a little more on their level. But that life skills wheel is a very favorite of mine. And then that's honestly what those recognition forms are designed to do is to say, okay, you have developed through 4-H through the different levels and especially those intermediate and senior level forms, they want to say, okay, how did 4-H change you and what pathway has it put you on? How are you taking what you've learned and doing something more with it? I have this passion that I would love to see every person have a job or career that they enjoy. And I think 4-H is a great way to do that because it helps you to explore those things. There are jobs that you might make millions of dollars, but you could not pay me to go and do. There are also jobs that while
Yes.
everybody needs funds to do to live and pay your bills, there's also a lot of jobs that I would do for next to nothing because it's a different kind of payment. So finding those and a part of that is going to be reflecting on those experiences and figuring out where you can take those opportunities.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, you
I love
touched,
that.
sorry. Yeah. Me too. Katie, you touched on something that's really interesting is the the fact that we have all these forms in 4-H. And a lot of people just think it's paperwork. They don't realize there's actually a deeper purpose to a lot of those forms. And then I think this is where the training, becomes so essential is that people have the right orientation to what it's actually a tool, but they think it's just paperwork, right? Which
It
is
comes
unfortunate.
across very much as paperwork until you start to realize what it is putting you to do. It also, we're teaching record keeping.
Yeah.
April
Well,
15th for all adults is coming, whether we're ready for it or not. And we all have records in our life that we have to keep. And so we're starting to instill those habits and those abilities into our youth at a very young age. They don't have to be complex. They can be adjusted for the different ages and stages of our youth. But these very much are tools and not just paperwork or busy work.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love how you said about the jobs, the career choices. That's something that I'm very passionate about as well. I'm 18 and I'm actually a real estate agent. And I would not have been able to do that without the confidence that 4-H gave me and the skills that 4-H gave me. Honestly, filling out those project forms, that was a game changer for me.
We
You
quote
know,
you on
kids,
that.
they don't realize, until they look back and they reflect on what they did, and then they get confidence from that, and that gives them the grounds to do more. They feel like they can do more, and that's really what got me to where I am now. And so, yeah, that's something that I'm very passionate about that.
One of the counties that I work with several years back, we were pushing because we need to do more college career readiness programming. So we actually thought, paperworks and judging an event, they seem like simple things, but there's those golden nuggets that are hidden and woven into them. We created a new event for our achievement day called Career Connections. And we needed a newer event that really challenged our older 4-H members because doing collections is not as exciting to bring all of your things in when you're 16, 17, 18. You want something that really applies to you and gets you thinking about your future. So Career Connections challenged the youth to take one of the 4-H projects that they're enrolled in, and they basically are doing a research report, and they can present it a PowerPoint, just talking, however, but it has criteria and says, okay, how can that project you're in now become a career?
Mm,
What kind of
Mhm.
salary would you make? What kind of education would you make? Where are those jobs located? And really starts them on the path of doing that research to really start building that bridge between where you are now and where you want to be. And
right.
really challenging them to say, okay, if you've found your passion, you've thought about what you want to do, how do we take that a step and apply it? Which can be a great big part of that.
Right. So a lot of opportunities in 4-H to do that, to create those reflection spaces for our older youth to really start thinking about their future. And I don't think we've really tapped into that fully, right, Katie? I mean,
Yeah,
there's
we
just
should do a whole other podcast on that.
So, and
Yeah.
one of the things that I do in our region is we do I call it recognition prep, but it really, in essence, is a training on reflection and how to use those recognition forms to think about what you're doing. There's a reason why we fill them out at the end of the 4-H year. That's so that
Mhm.
you make informed decisions about what projects and activities you want to set for yourself for goals going into that next 4-H year. There are
mm,
basic questions that you ask yourself. At one point, I actually got cheap mirrors and wrote each of the questions on a mirror. And, the first one is, what did you do? The second one is, what did you learn? How can you apply what you learned? And then why does it matter to you and to other people? And if you ask yourself those 4 questions and you answer those 4 questions through the different sections in your recognition form, you really get the value and experience that's going to make you be competitive with those forms, but also making better decisions going into that next 4-H year.
Nice.
great.
I love it. Here's my next one. What challenges do volunteers, or you specifically, commonly face when trying to lead reflection, and how can they overcome them? This is kind of a reflection question inside of a reflection podcast.
Yes.
There you go.
So,
Mm,
one of the biggest challenges is being intentional. And that's something that we all have to be more focused on what we're doing. So we have to make it a priority for ourselves. The other thing is that you're going to naturally do reflection at the end of something. And in the society we live in, we are all hustling from one thing to the next thing. So it may mean structuring your activities to be shorter and figuring out fun ways so that they want to stick around for that 5 or 10 minute piece where you can do those reflection activities, make them fun. Maybe it's a kickball game. And as everybody goes up to kick, that is when you incorporate in that reflection. Okay, before you kick, you got to answer one question about what we learned today or how you could use it or what are we going to do next time or what is your homework for next time. So maybe we learned that goats have parasites. And the next question is, okay, before you come back next time, you're going to research one treatment method for each one of those. And so we have that continuation of knowledge. But really, it's going to be keeping people to participate in those activities because most people, oh, if we're done with the activity, we're going to pick up our stuff and we're going to head on.
Yeah.
So really finding that way that speaks to them and makes it meaningful for them in a fun way so that they want to stick around.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. This is we can make this quick, but we kinda touched on it. How can you make reflection more like, adapt it so that way younger members or youth that are hesitant to speak up or nervous, they can get more involved? You kinda touched on more fun things, make it more interactive, that type of stuff, but if you have any other ideas?
Making it fun and making it not forced. And that is probably the biggest thing. And it may be finding ways that you can do reflection that they don't even, some groups, you might have some youth who won't speak. And so it may be you put signs about different life skills or different things that they learned, and you have them move around the room to stand. Okay, if you agree with this statement, move this way, move that way. So you
Yeah.
can guide them through that, but a lot of that is going to be knowing the group that you're working with, but look out for ways that they can provide input where they may not have to speak if they're not comfortable. Also, the biggest thing is take the time to establish that sense of belonging. 4-H project groups and clubs are phenomenal groups, and the support that you can gain from those is just absolutely amazing. But you have to take the time to make sure folks are comfortable, because if you're not comfortable, you're not going to ask those questions. Even as adults, they laugh at me because I'll be in groups, and the first thing I say, "Okay, let's do introductions," and they're like, "Okay, really?" But honestly, I'm the kind of person, unless I know and I'm comfortable in the room, I may or may not speak up and ask that question or share that little nugget of what I've learned.
Right.
And it's valuable. And for everybody
Yeah.
to be comfortable in that contribution sense, we have to develop that sense of belonging.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It's intimately linked. Belonging, sparks, you already touched on sparks. They're all interconnected with reflection, for sure.
Mhm.
Okay. This is kind of the super question, Katie, no pressure. What is one key takeaway you hope that volunteers remember when thinking about reflection and their 4-H programs?
The $40 million question.
A $40 million question.
One
What
thing.
I hope that they will take away is the fact of intentionality. If you take the time to think about or lead youth in thinking about their own learning, that then becomes a life skill for them. And it helps in that decision making process. We all go through our daily lives and we make decision after decision after decision. But if we don't stop and think about what guided us to make those decisions, they may or may not align. If I decide not to get up and get out of bed this morning, but then I want to go online and spend a couple $100 on wonderful Amazon, those decisions may or may not be aligned with my bank account. And
Yeah.
so being intentional at guiding through that, and not just, honestly, it's not just in 4-H, it's in life in general. We as a society need to take that time to slow down and think about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And then does it matter? How many parents race from ball game to ball game to ball game to ball game, and maybe their kid hates it.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
we slowed down and thought about it and had a conversation about what we're getting out of it, we might make other choices. Or we might say, okay, this is something that we really enjoy, and maybe we want to invest some more time into training or different activities. But we need to spend more time as a society thinking about what we're doing and answering that why question. And why does it matter?
Yes. I think you definitely just won the $40 million. That was good.
Yeah, and I mean, I would even go so far as to say that I think there's a lot of people that are actually even afraid to ask to do that, to stop and to self-reflect because they may be kind of afraid of what they find,
It, it,
or what they will find, and that
it's a
can be scary.
challenge.
It is a
It's a challenge,
challenge.
and it's something that I have started doing myself. I mean, try to practice what I preach. And, at the end of the day, okay, what did I do today? Now, why did that matter? If you continue to remind yourself why you did something and why it was important, you probably will continue doing that. A lot of our volunteers probably, we like to say that 4 H is happy, and it is, and it's great, but not every event is going to fill your cup. You might become discouraged. But if you will stop and reflect, maybe only 2 people came to your project meeting, but if you reflect on that and think, okay, what difference did that make to those 2 young people? You might find that even if it was only 2 young people, it was worth the investment of your time. And really, that's what it matters.
Yeah. So it's definitely a skill. I mean, you made a really strong case for that. It's a really important skill.
Yeah, and it's worth the discomfort. It's definitely worth the
That's it.
discomfort.
That's exactly. That's a great point, Caydance. That's where the growth comes in. Is from that that discomfort, getting out of the comfort zone, and doing the hard work. It's hard.
We like to challenge our members to grow and develop, but nothing says that we as volunteers aren't growing and developing through our volunteerism as well.
That's
And
right.
that is another very valuable asset that a lot of people don't recognize.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, it's also, I think, really like 4-H. Young people in 4-H, they learn the hard skills in an easy way. Like, look at how many of our 4-Hers, like Caydance, like so many, they become great public speakers. But public speaking is one of the hardest skills to learn,
Yes.
and yet they do it so effortlessly because they're doing it so much and for so long, right?
Yeah.
Reflection is the same thing. If we embed it in our programs very early on, systematically throughout 4-H, then reflection becomes just what they do. It's like nothing.
Yeah,
And it becomes
muscle memory.
it becomes very easy. So, yeah,
It becomes easy, and honestly, it's a part of
habitual.
decision making. And
Exactly.
that's
It
something
becomes
that we need
just
to
how they
do. Honestly, I'm pretty sure that Caydance did some reflecting before she decided to invest in a career and had to
Right.
think, okay, why am I doing this? And is it something I'm going to get something out of? And do I have the skills to do this and do it well? And
Right.
it's that growth that happens within us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And in my experience, it was definitely worth the discomfort for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's for someone from your generation at your age to say that, that's pretty amazing. I mean, I don't know any other 18-year-old real estate agents. I mean, that's amazing, so
Obviously,
Thank
you
you,
are
appreciate it.
a proof that 4-H equips you for life and that
yeah,
reflection is a big part of that.
Yeah.
that's right.
I love to share
Experiential
my
learning
story
is
because that's
important.
that's what I wanna tell people. They can do more, they can do more. They just have to reflect.
There you go.
So, yep.
All right. Well, we're about out of time. It's been a half an hour, so I don't want to go on too long. But thank you so much, Katie, for coming on and sharing your wisdom and your insights and your amazing knowledge. And
Yes, thank you, Katie. Appreciate it.
Thanks for
I'm
having
sure
me.
volunteers will benefit tremendously from this. So until next time, and we will have you on again, I'm sure. So thank you both.